Hello again, Year 5, and welcome to what will be our final topic lesson of the week. Obviously, we started the week focusing on how World War One started. Our next lesson was how it affected the soldiers. Our third lesson was how it affected women who stayed at home. And our final lesson will be how it affected the children. So, imagine what it would have been like during the war to be at home, where all of a sudden your father, your brothers, possibly your uncles and grandfathers have all gone off to war and you're staying behind. Suddenly, you're expected to be, especially if you're a boy, the man of the house and you had a lot more responsibility. As well as the girls, they had to be a lot more grown up because they had to help the mum with the housework as well. So imagine your child, imagine what that would have been like for you to experience that and experience that time in history compared to it now. So, a couple of minutes thinking about that. So, over 500,000 children lost their fathers during the war, and many also lost uncles and brothers. They were taught a lot about the war at school, so they knew exactly what was going on most of the time. To a point where this girl called Ethel wrote this lovely little poem, which I'm going to give a little read now. So you can see it, and it's a bit bigger. I'm going to extend it. So just have a little listen to this. I don't know much about fighting, and I've never seen a sword, but Daddy's gone and left us, and they say he'll get reward. But oh me, the house is lonely, and poor Mo's awful sad. She's one pleasure now, one only, and it's me now we've lost Dad. Dad, they tell me, is a soldier, and he ought to go and fight. And our neighbours say he's plucky, and I'm sure he's going right. But oh dear, we do so miss him. And poor mother sits and sighs, and I know she's very troubled by the tears in her eyes. So, what sort of emotion do you think this girl is experiencing, and how can we tell? Because I'm reading that, and it doesn't give it doesn't give a very positive emotion towards it. It gives I get the impression that she's missing her dad quite a lot, and she's quite scared about what's going to happen. So imagine that feeling across the whole country with all the children. Their lives are being turned upside down, and they're missing their dad quite a lot because they don't know if he's going to come back alive. Because a lot of soldiers did die during the World War. So as we saw yesterday, women had to take over a lot of jobs that men were no longer able to do. This in turn meant that children had to do some jobs that the mothers would usually do. So in 1916, when conscription was introduced, conscription is just when it was compulsory. Basically, if you have fighting age, you had to join the army. There was even more demand, and fewer men were left. So we're going to take a quick look at some of the jobs that the boys and girls did, because they were slightly different. So again, this website will be in the description of the video, so if you click down there somewhere, this website will be here, so you can look at it yourself, because there is a little video for you to watch. I can't play it on this because the sound won't work properly, but you can watch it yourself. Again, if you just click down there with the description, and the link will be there to BBC Bitesize. So, between 1914 and 1918, everyone, no matter what age you were, was expected to do their bit to help with the war work. Many British children were very keen to lend a hand, so they took on jobs and helped raise money. They wanted to support their fathers and all the brothers who were away fighting on the front line. So, obviously food was very hard to come by, so people were encouraged to grow their own food. That just means because they couldn't get food because the German U-boats bombing the boats, so getting imports was very tricky. They had to find ways of growing it in Britain instead. So the children helped by digging, weeding, and cultivating vegetable patches. So that is digging up, making sure there's no weeds, so anything that shouldn't really be there, and cultivate to make sure all the seeds are in and they are growing properly. And that was both of them. So boys helped with the heavy work on the farms. They also grew vegetables in gardens, backyards, and even parks. In this picture, Boy Scouts are doing their bit by setting rabbit traps, because then they'll get meat from the rabbits. The girls in this picture are harvesting cabbages grown at their school. Girls also gathered fruit to eat at harvest time. So again, harvest time is when the crops need to be cut. So again, they were working on farms, harvesting all the veg and fruit that had been grown. So fundraising was obviously very important too, because the war cost a lot of money and it was not free. So children collected many useful things such as blankets, books, and even conkers. Some things were sent to soldiers on the front line. Others were sold to raise funds for the war effort. Money raised could be used to build warships or to help wounded soldiers. There was even a Blue Cross fund to help horses hurt in battle, because horses, again, were used quite a lot, and a lot of horses died during the war as well. So, again, here are the boys collecting conkers to make. Conkers were used in making shells and bullets, so conkers are quite hard. Flag days were held to make money for wartime projects, so they would sell little flags or badges that people could put on their clothes to show that they are showing the British flag and doing their bit, and that was just a way to make money for the war. And they were also encouraged to collect hens' eggs. As you can see here, boys and girls helped to collect eggs, which were used to feed wounded soldiers. Many homes kept chickens if they had space outside. So you had two main groups. You had the Boy Scouts and you had the Girl Guides, and they both did slightly different things. So the Boy Scouts, how did they help the war effort? So first things first, they carried messages on behalf of the War Office. So people would send them. The War Office would send messages, and they get the boys to take them to where they needed to be. They guard railway lines, water reservoirs, and coastlines in case anyone tried to destroy them, because that will stop people transporting food everywhere. They watched the skies for attack and sounded their bugles. That's like a brass instrument to signal when an air raid was over. Rifle ranges were opened where boys learned how to shoot. So boys, sometimes as young as you, learned how to shoot so they could help defend Britain if it was invaded. The girls took on a little bit of a different role. They knitted socks and scarves to help keep British soldiers warm. They learned first aid so they could help with injuries. They carried important messages and delivered milk. Some reports even suggest that the Girl Guides acted as messengers for the British Civil Service, the MI5, because the Boy Scouts were apparently the first choice for this work, but they turned out to be a little bit talkative. So that slowed them down. So many children tried hard to do their bit in whatever way they could. Sometimes that meant looking after younger brothers or sisters, helping with housework, or joining long queues for food, because food was obviously rationed, so you only had a certain amount, so that caused big queues. So the children would often be in queues, so the mothers could be at home doing something more useful. So I'm going to stop sharing that, and I'm going to go back to this, like this. So everyone did what they could to help out, like we just said. So we've been through this just now, but I'll recap a little bit. So children sometimes looked after their younger siblings whilst mothers went out to work. They also did housework and queued for food, which was getting scarce, which means it was hard. Scarce just means it was hard and hard to get. And they grew as many vegetables as they could at home. Children also raised money for the war by having little flags and badges, and they collected things like books, blankets, and magazines that could be sent to soldiers. In 1916, schools were a little bit different. Children only had to stay in school until they were 12. So nowadays that would be year 8. So when you get to year 8, you left school. So many left at this stage to help with the war effort. So here we have got some jobs. And what I want you to try and do is I want you to sort these into boy jobs, both, or girl jobs. So your list should look a little bit like this. So I've got boys, both, and girls. So take a little look at these and see if you can put them into the correct column. Have a little pause, and then we'll see how we get. Right, okay. Shall we take a look at the boys column first? So boys, they guarded railways and coastlines to make sure that they were protected, because obviously coastlines were important for boats to drop food, and railway lines were important so they could transport the food over long distances on land. So these are very, very important. They learned how to shoot just in case they got invaded. They joined the army often by lying about their age. So you see in some war videos that the men in the videos look very young. That's because they lied about their age, because they were that determined to fight. They lied. Or sometimes they would join the Navy at 15, which you were legally allowed to do. So what would they both do? They would both go around collecting the eggs. They would both help out on farms. The boys would do the heavy duty stuff, and the girls would do the harvesting. And again, they both would carry messages for the war office. The boys would prefer to do this, but sometimes they're a little bit chatty, so the girls would do it instead. So, what did the girls do? The girls knitted socks and scarves for the soldiers. They learned first aid to help with any injuries the soldiers might have, and obviously they had quite a lot. They delivered milk for everybody, and they packed parcels of clothes to be sent to the soldiers on the front line to help keep them warm. So, what I want you to do now is think about all the jobs that these had to do. Have a little think. One way in which your life is similar to World War I, so for example, we both went to school, and one way in which your life is different to the children in World War I. So have a little think about all the things we just talked about. How are your lives similar, and how are your lives different? Okay. Thank you. I hope you've come up with some good stuff. If you're struggling, have a talk with your parents or your sisters or your brothers who are at home to see if they can help you. Have a little chat about that. So, one of the things the war did was they started using propaganda. So I'll go through what was in a second. So even though lots of the jobs were hard work, people were happy to do them. The government encouraged them in these jobs using propaganda, messages making aspects of the war sound more positive than they actually were. This was to keep spirits up and encourage people to do their bit. So propaganda, it's just making something sound better than it is, or conversely, worse than it is. So what they used there was sometimes they would put up posters of things that the Germans might have been doing, but they might have been made it slightly worse than it actually was. Or when the men were signing up for the war, they made it sound like a really positive thing, and how manly you're being, and how brilliant you were doing, and how wonderful you were doing for the country, and what a good job you were doing. So you're trying to make it sound really positive, really, really positive. Or conversely, if they're talking about your enemy, really negative, really, really negative. So it's just a way of sounding. It's just a way of getting your point across, but in a slightly biased way. So your task is going to be very simple. I want you to create a propaganda poster encouraging children to do their bit in World War I. So there are several things you could create a poster about, and that is growing vegetables, about why is that so important, joining the Navy, learning first aid, why is that important, knitting socks and scarves, selling flags and badges to raise money, collecting bones and meat to be used in weapons, and guarding railways and coastlines. So think about all these. What do they show? What do they show? They show a big picture of very happy people, showing what a wonderful thing they are doing. So try and make your poster really stand out and really make that thing sound wonderful. You should really persuade somebody to look at a post and go, yeah, I want to do that. That sounds awesome. So I look forward to getting some of your posters. If you can't quite email me, then feel free to give them to me on Monday. That'd be absolutely fine. But if you could email me, that'd be wonderful. I hope you have a lovely weekend, and hopefully I will see everybody first thing on Monday. Have a good weekend, and I will see you later.